right. It looks like I am up to give everyone the official welcome. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Food Recovery Network's annual fundraiser. This is going to be an exciting opportunity for you to learn, if you don't already know, a lot more about Food Recovery Network, not only the work that they do, but the impact that they're having on so many of our communities throughout the country. So we're excited to be here today to talk not only about the organization, but also how you can participate as well and help to keep an organization that is doing great work in our community alive and well, not just now, but well into the future. I have the distinct opportunity of being here today, not only as your MC, but also a friend of your executive director. I know her as Regina Anderson because we go back more than 2 decades, but you know her as Regina Harmon now, and she has been, for me, a friend and mentor over the years. Regina and I actually met, I want to say 2007 in Pittsburgh. At the time, I was working with Poro Center for Civic Leadership, and Regina at the time was a trainer there with that organization. And I had the great honor of developing and forging a great relationship with her that took us over many bridges in Pittsburgh to go on many runs early in the morning as we were both trying to do our best to stay fit and beautiful. During those many runs, she and I got to talk a lot about life, but also more importantly, her commitment to people, her commitment to activism, her commitment to justice. And being able to see her progress, not only then in Pittsburgh on the bridges that we got to run there, but to see what she's been able to do here in Washington really is a commitment to who she is foundationally and what she wants to do for people beyond where we live, making sure that they have access to food, making sure that things are equitable and just, and making sure that the organization continues its mission of serving people. And so I'm excited to be able to be here with her and to be here with all of you and reminding us about the mission of this organization and the work that it continues to do and how we can all be an active participant in that. I do have the distinct honor as well of introducing our board president, Dr. Jessica Lautz, who will be continuing our conversation today.
Larry, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today. And I think I'm most thrilled to actually introduce one of the students. And I think this is really the key of what Food Recovery Network is all about, is not only sustainable action and putting food into bellies of people, but that it's actually run by volunteer students. I think that's incredible. So Isabel Estrada is going to be talking, and she is a senior at Georgetown University. And while being a senior at Georgetown University, she's studying international relations and business, but she actually volunteers with FRN, and she's been doing that since the early days of 2023. She now serves as co-president. Her time at FRN, she's worked to expand and scale the reach of recoveries, to build a community of students around her, to get excited about this and address injustices in food systems. She's also been involved in advocacy work and lobbying Congress. Isabella, I am incredibly impressed by you. She is working to really address food waste, food insecurity, and is a public speaker as well. So Isabella, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lautz. It's great to see everyone. Good afternoon. So just to give you a sense of how I joined FRN, I come from a family where wasting food is basically a crime. So you can imagine how shocked I was to see tons of dozens of food being dumped into trash cans at my dining hall. And that disconnect from what I saw and the reality that many students on my campus and in the DC community would benefit from this food, I was, determined to take action. And so I joined the Georgetown chapter of the Food Recovery Network right when it was first established in the spring of 2023, first as a volunteer and now as co-president. And I want to share with you all how FRN has impacted me personally, especially in helping me grow the kind of leadership skills needed to make a difference. So as co-president, I've learned more about leadership than through any other class, job, or internship I've ever had. And that's because I'm helping to coordinate a process end to end with the support of FRN National. Each week, I'm responsible for making sure that we successfully recover food from multiple dining locations, multiple events on campus, and we donate this food to our partner nonprofit, Charlie's Place, in the DC area. And many of you might be familiar with it since it's long-standing and has a great record of serving people in the DuPont Circle area. And as you can imagine, running a food recovery program is far from a one-woman show. From juggling pots and pans to weighing hundreds of pounds of food and troubleshooting logistics on the spot. I've learned how to motivate volunteers and build community around a shared commitment to tackling food waste and food insecurity. And FRN has really helped me at every step of the way. It's also opened the door to advocacy. Last year, I participated in the Gen Z Food and Hunger Summit, which is a national gathering of student leaders interested in food systems issues. And this is an opportunity I was encouraged to participate in thanks to FRN. And I met student leaders from across the country and spent a day on the Hill advocating for legislation to address food waste and hunger. And so in all these ways, FRN has helped me build tangible leadership experience and connect with a national network of people who deeply care about these issues. And what I think is most powerful is that I'm just one of many students across the country who's been touched by the mission of the Food Recovery Network. So thanks again for supporting the movement. And now I'm really excited to introduce Katie Jones. Jones joined FRN 7 years ago as its first Chief Operating Officer. Katie has worked across all sectors, including beginning her career managing the fundraising, communications, and messaging for local political campaigns. She also worked for Harris Interactive, which is now Nielsen, in its nonprofit and consumer packaged goods practice. While at Harris Interactive, she ran the Donor Pulse, which tracked the rates of giving, volunteering, and advocacy in America. Over to you, Katie.
Great, thank you so much. I am Katie Jones. I'm the COO of Food Recovery Network, and I celebrated my 5-year work anniversary in March. And I am here to introduce Regina, because while I've only been at FRN for 5 years, I've actually known Regina Harmon, Executive Director of FRN, for well over a decade. I began working on political campaigns and with large consulting firms, and I ultimately wound up working in nonprofit advocacy work, which is where I met Regina 13 years ago. And while Regina and I have grown and changed in the time that we have known each other, what has impressed me about Regina's leadership then are still the qualities that impress me about Regina's leadership now. What impressed me then and what still impresses me now is that Regina cares deeply about people. I remember being in prep or debrief meetings with her and being struck by how she would always make a point to refer to people by their first names and offer some sort of personal story about them. As a person who craves efficiency myself, at first I remember thinking this was really odd. Like, why would it matter what someone's name is or if they had a dog? What we really just needed to know was, are they coming or not? Are they donating or not? But then as we progressed in the work, I realized that naming people and their attributes was Regina's gentle way of helping the group remember that humans are the center of our work, each with their own personal story about what brings them to the room and also why they want to be part of this work. And ultimately, I found through working with Regina that she was right. It's not important to count attendance or donations, because the thing that we should actually be focusing on is the person in the room and what they're bringing to the work, because that is actually the quality that moves change forward. Also, Regina then and Regina now has always had her priorities straight. People, kindness, empathy, and emotional and physical wellness come first, period. And in a world where so often we're told that everything is urgent and everything is important, Regina will be the first to tell you whether that's true or not. And as a result, she naturally prioritizes her relationships with people, her repertoire with her staff, with the community, and she helps us all focus on the ultimate systems change needed to recover enough surplus food to feed everyone who is hungry in the United States. I've personally found it's in the subtlety of her leadership that she's most effective, because she is willing to be patient and prioritize the elements of a relationship which fundamentally build trust. And that is something that is not easily done, and it is all too hard to come by these days. It's a quality that many take for granted, but I do not. I trust Regina, and that's ultimately what drew me to FRN and probably what brought many of you here today. Throughout our friendship, she would talk fondly about FRN and what she was working so hard to build. In the beginning, when most of the work was outsourced, she prioritized hiring both women and minority-owned businesses. As FRN grew, she was tenacious in building relationships with peer organizations that were mutually beneficial rather than overtly competitive. And she ultimately sold me on the experience of being part of a grassroots movement, because once again, she was right. By being connected to the closest on the ground, it's actually what makes FRN's work timely, relevant, and dynamic, because we are fundamentally championing the change that the people on the ground need. And in the end, I think that's actually what I'm most proud of so far, is that I work for an organization that's emblematic of the best parts of Regina's leadership. There is always a place for everyone at the table. Kindness and humanity is seen and recognized, and contributions, financial and otherwise, are deeply appreciated. FRN is building a community of diverse stakeholders who, regardless of ideology or geographic location, work every day in ways big and small to recover surplus food to feed our neighbors in need. And I'm very grateful that Regina gave me the opportunity to have a seat at the table. So with that, I turn the floor to Regina Harmon, Executive Director of FRN.
Oh my goodness, thank you, Katie. And thank you, Larry. I just have maybe some space to say so many thank yous, because hopefully it'll stave off the many tears that I have right now. And I can tie back to some of the themes that we heard from Katie. But first, I do want to give a land acknowledgement to the Piscataway Conoy, on whose land Food Recovery Network is headquartered, on whose land my home sits. And I know many of you in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area as well. The Piscataway Conoy is a modern band, tribe, family. Modern meaning there are still many from the Piscataway here living in this area, and have inhabited this area for many, many generations before this wonderful country that we now call the United States even existed, and continue to be stewards of our land, our water, and our air. So thank you to the Piscataway Conoy. A huge thank you to Larry for emceeing today. I hope all of you have an opportunity to meet Larry in person, or if not, at least check out his Instagram, or see Larry at WUSA 9. His reporting is just so incredibly stellar, including one of the things that you all might have seen recently, which is with home assessments, and how home assessments, depending on the color of your skin, if you are a Black or brown person assessing the value of your home, it gets assessed at much lower cost than if you were a white person having your home assessed. So Larry did some really incredible groundbreaking work on that, and among other incredible things. And it's been such an honor to be friends with Larry and to see his career grow over the years. I also wanted to say thank you really fully to Katie, who has helped me to grow so much over the years. And behind everything that Katie has said, especially when Katie joined the team, just making all of these things possible. I joke around a lot, but you think that you're really good at something, and for me, it was organizational development. Like I knew what I wanted to do at FRN. I had the stubborn vision, to make those things happen. And then, I had the incredible fortune of, Katie joining the team, and then just stepping back and letting Katie do her thing. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything about organizational development. Katie is just so incredibly stellar at this, and has really helped to focus our incredible team at Food Recovery Network, has ensured that everyone has you know, the responsibility that the purpose within growing Food Recovery Network. And we are the kind of organization that we are today because of so much of Katie's leadership and incredible just presence on the team. So thank you so much, Katie. And truly to the team of Food Recovery Network. I know some of you are really new here. You might not know our work so fully. Our team at Food Recovery Network is incredible. And I have had the honor of working with so many on the team for, you know, I've been at FRN for about 9.5 years. Some on the team have been here for upwards of 7 years, 5 years, 4 years. Our newest grouping of folks that we brought on almost a year ago has just really incorporated so fully into the work of FRN to feed as many people as we can every single year. And it's just, again, a true honor to work alongside all of you. I am so thankful for all of you for taking some time out of your busy days to learn, to connect, to vision the future with Food Recovery Network and with all of us here today. At Food Recovery Network, we are here to tackle would-be food waste. And we do that by recovering precious surplus food and ensure that food gets to people who need it. And we therefore also help our environments, you know, during this time of climate change. And so addressing hunger, let's just call it what it is, hunger. We can say these other terms, you know, food insecurity, but it's hunger. We're here to address hunger in our communities, and we're here to help be more easeful to our lived environment. And we'll discuss all of those topics further, those connected pieces further, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who is here. I hope this is an entry point into a conversation that we can continue on, because as Katie mentioned, we really do, and as Larry mentioned, we really do need your investment in Food Recovery Network so that we can feed more people, that we can recover more food, and that we can increase and deepen our programming that we know is working to increase food access. I wanted to say thank you to our sponsor today. We're so proud that Latham & Watkins LLP has sponsored our event today. Thank you so much to Latham & Watkins. Our outgoing first ever Vice President of the Board of Directors, Bill McConaughey, works at Latham. And yesterday, in one sense, we said, you know, goodbye to Bill as he rolled off the board officially, but his legacy will continue on, in particular, even today, with the sponsorship of Latham & Watkins. So thank you so much for believing in our work and helping to support our work financially. Also, today is May Day, May 1st. Some of you might know the significance of May Day. I just wanted to put that into some meaningful reflections for me. You know, May Day is a celebration of the workforce, of all of those who fight for fair wages, who fight for dignity in their workplace, and who fight for safe working conditions so that everyone can have that purpose in whatever roles they play at their jobs. So thank you so much to everyone who works, you know, everyone who cares so much about making sure that they can have a respected place to work like Food Recovery Network. And then, you know, lastly, we're going to hear from some really incredible speakers, but I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Jessica, our amazing board president, who's been in our corner for such a long time, and to make that connection with the work that I just mentioned to you with Larry. Dr. Jessica, in her time at the National Association of Realtors, was able to put forward an original piece of research work that shows the connection between food insecurity, again, hunger, food insecurity, and housing insecurity. That if you are food insecure, the chances are very high, and the connection is there, that you are housing insecure. And then there's so many other insecurities in between all that too. So thank you so much, Dr. Jessica, for being in our corner. I cannot wait for all of you to hear from Dr. Dan Barnett and Eliza Barclay, just truly incredible people, first of all, but they have such great insights across what they're seeing every day in their careers, in their lived experience. And I just wanted to mention that they're definitely speaking, you know, as individuals when they come here and address everyone today. So we wanted to talk about, let's dig in. We wanted to talk about the future of Food Recovery Network. We've been around since 2011.
We started at the University of Maryland in 2011, and it was started by college students who saw firsthand food being wasted in their college dining halls. In their local community, people were experiencing hunger, so they devised a plan to recover that surplus food. What started off as one college campus became 7 college campuses, became 24, and today we have over 200 college campuses all across the United States recovering surplus food from their college dining halls and their surrounding food businesses, because young people understand that food insecurity is something that no one needs to live with.
I love being part of a community of students who are really passionate about food waste and hunger. And I love seeing how the sum of our individual efforts, which may not be so great, can really add up to something very meaningful and impactful.
We work directly in communities that we know based on our mapping data that shows there are high numbers of people who are experiencing food insecurity, that has high quantities of surplus food, and we have what we call latent capacity. So higher education institutions, when we start to recover in these communities, we're able to feed more people faster. We are the largest student-led nonprofit recovering surplus food and donating it and taking action for the climate.
What I've learned about recovering food and serving the community is just, I mean, truly how much need there is. There's always people looking for us to provide our services, for us to volunteer. I mean, we're here today, which is amazing. So I think just that it's ever growing, ever expanding, and we always need volunteers as well.
Yay! I don't know how. I almost forgot about our amazing video. Thank you to our incredible communications team for putting that together. And I'm so glad that we got to hear from Isabella Estrada earlier today, one of our student leaders, also featured in this video. You know, it's funny in the video, if I sound like I'm shouting, I am, because when that video was taken, we were recovering from the Super Bowl tailgate parties. There was 2 different large scale events, and the crowds in those at those 2 events were so loud. They were so celebratory. So it was definitely shouting. So, but to continue further, you know, I just wanted to contextualize, you know, when we think about the future of Food Recovery Network, you know, in this moment, because you know, when again we're all here, we all, you know, took time out of our day to show up and learn more about Food Recovery Network, and all of us, you know, at some times, and maybe even particular this moment, we're facing uncertainty about the future, uncertainty about this immediate moment. You know, here in the DC area, a lot of people have lost their jobs working for the federal government, or, you know, jobs that supported federal government work. And many people have maybe had to retire early when they weren't expecting to. Many people maybe weren't sure how they were going to land after some of this uncertainty. And with honor and respect to that, you know, that's exactly why Food Recovery Network is here. You know, we in this area happen to be in a pretty affluent area. But as we know, food insecurity is in every single zip code, and it looks different depending on where you might be. You know, here in these areas, we have historic homes, really big houses, and people may look like they are doing really well, but a job loss or a health issue. You know, again, as I said earlier, food is one of the things that gets taken off the options for people as they are trying to make their ends meet. And we've done a lot of this mapping work, and this you know, map here shows some of our imprints, our impact, but it also shows with our mapping work the focus of Food Recovery Network, where we can see across all of the different counties around the United States. There's 3,400 or so counties in the United States, and only in 22 of them is the median salary for families a living wage? And I'll get into, our advocacy work in a second, but I really want that to resonate with everyone, that, during the pandemic, during these other times, food insecurity has been ever present and it spikes, and we're able to bring those numbers down. But today, we're at 47 million people who are food insecure, 47 million people. And what's so important about Food Recovery Network is, when the students started at the University of Maryland and they began to ask other students, is that they wanted to focus in on what can they do for their immediate communities to help ease food insecurity, to help their lived environment. And so within all of that, there's also so much to celebrate. For those of you, you might not have ever gone on a food recovery before. We'd love to get your places of business, if you have a big event or dining hall, to get you all recovering food. But it really is so celebratory, that in these hard moments, when we look at what the data is telling us, yes, there is so much opportunity to help people. And that's exactly what we want to do. And that's exactly why we wanted to have this conversation with all of you. And I, as I say this, as I move forward with the content for today, as Larry mentioned at the very beginning of this, this is a fundraiser for Food Recovery Network. We want to make sure to answer all of your questions, especially those of you who are not as familiar with our work. We want to answer all of your questions so that you can feel that you understand how Food Recovery Network works and what we do with the financial support that we receive so that we can feed more people faster. So thank you for making that consideration, because I know a lot of you might have some questions, and we get a lot of questions about, so how exactly do you recover food? What does it actually look like? And we can definitely answer those questions. And I also want to inspire all of you as we look into the future of Food Recovery Network based on the programming that we have, the work that we've done, where we're headed into the future. Moving a little bit further in, we, with our mapping work, as I mentioned, that mapping work came from a time in FRN's, moment in history where we had been around for about 10 years, and we wanted to understand, what our grassroots effort, what our movement was able to produce, the impact that we had, and how could we distill all of that to make a focused and intentional pathway into the future so that we could do this incredibly ambitious thing that we've put forward in our strategic framework called FRN 10X. And that is to recover surplus food to feed everyone who's hungry in the United States. What could we do as an organization to make that our focus, based on our talents, based on our expertise, based on our connections and relationships in the world? And from that, we were able to develop quite a lot of programming that is exciting, and I look forward to talking with all of you about as we go into the conversation today. There are millions of tons of food that is wasted every single year in the United States. Precious food that could be eaten by people. And we want to make sure that we are able to increase our programming and deepen our programming and our relationship among our communities so that we can stop that dizzying cycle of wasting so much precious food. And as I mentioned earlier, at the same time, and I talk about this a lot, that 47 million people are food insecure. And this is something that goes across administrations. Every single person on this conversation today was born into a United States, a nation that has allowed for food insecurity to become a structural part of our day-to-day lives. And at Food Recovery Network, we say we don't want that to be a norm. We don't want to feel comfortable with that. We are agitated by the fact that right now 47 million people are food insecure. When the pandemic hit, it skyrocketed up to 54 million people as people were losing jobs, as people were getting really sick. And as people who maybe never before had to tap into a safety net for the United States that was fractured, had big old holes in it, and they kind of fell through. And they quickly saw a lot of their resources that they built up dwindle because of COVID and all of the effects that COVID had. So we continue to see all these spikes and the number does get down, but it is still in the tens of millions of people. And I always look to as a part of inspiration for me when I think about this work, because we do want to get this number down to 0, and we can. As I mentioned, FRN, we know exactly what we can do, and we want to inspire others so that that ripple effect is more and more and more. And suddenly food insecurity is not tolerated here in the United States. But I look to former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marcia Fudge. I'm not sure if you all know who Secretary Fudge is, but she was talking about homelessness at the time, but I think it really applies to food insecurity as well. And she said, when we think about homelessness, so for me, I'll say, when we think about food insecurity and the people who are food insecure, that number of people who find themselves, food insecure, it should be small. It should be a small number. And when it does happen, when people find themselves in a place where they are food insecure, that time should be really brief. And overall, the people who are experiencing food insecurity, the amount of time that it's happening, it should be really infrequent. It should be something that just doesn't really happen that often. But here we are in the United States where, we've normalized this amount of people who are food insecure, where we have put in such huge structures to feed people. And I'm glad that those structures are there. And I'm really proud of the fact that Food Recovery Network is in communities in ways that make sense for communities to get food further into the capillaries of the communities where these bigger structures might not work for everybody. There's lots of ways that we must ensure access to food. And then, for us on the other side of all this, it is, supporting our environment. And we started off at FRN 2011 caring so much about our environment, and we will go into the future caring about our environment. Many of you might know the statistic that food waste, and that includes precious food that's still good to eat, is the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases. What does that mean? Well, it means food is the number one thing in our landfills, and it doesn't need to be, not by a long shot. When the food breaks down in landfill, it creates CO2 gases. So there's methane, greenhouse gases. So it emits methane, it emits CO2. And, if you want to get really scientific about it, maybe we can ask, Eliza or Dr. Dan about this, but other gases are emitted as well. And it creates that cap across, our atmosphere that creates global warming. So when we, the United States, the number 1 emitter of greenhouse gases, tackles the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases, food, we can really change the shape of the United States, at least. We can at least do that. When I mentioned that at the video, when I was at the Super Bowl with the team, shouting, we were there in New Orleans, the last place that the Super Bowl was held. And before that, we were in Las Vegas. And before that, we were in Phoenix, Arizona. And I could go on and on. We've been doing this work for quite a while, these large-scale events. And I've written a lot about food waste and the impact on the environment. And we'll talk to Eliza about that. But a lot of people don't see that direct connection. And so we were literally in these spaces that had such an abundance of food, and had Food Recovery Network not been there, that food would have been thrown away. But when you are in a place like Las Vegas, and you're in a place like Phoenix, Arizona, or Glendale specifically, you're in these more desert areas. And when we know that 23% of our potable water is used to grow food, to transport food, and to cook food that is then thrown away, 23%. When you are literally standing in the middle of a desert area, it really does make that connection a bit more real. That we've seen a lot of data stories coming out about particular places that are experiencing drought, and that our aquifer levels are going down. A lot of that is because we're growing food and transporting, as I mentioned, and then just throwing the food away. In a place like New Orleans that is experiencing so much climate change directly, to be there and to have been able to recover about 12 or 14,000 pounds of food from 2 events, knowing that that's just the tip of the iceberg, it really does, as I said, put into context, the work of Food Recovery Network and how important this work is on our environment. At Food Recovery Network, we see a future where all of the food that we produce in the United States, or that we bring into the United States, all of that food has a purpose. And that's what we're trying to ensure that we can change that. We have the logistics, we have the expertise to ensure that all of this precious food gets eaten, because we know that there's plenty of people who could really use that food. And I wanted to also make a connection too with all of this, thinking about the future of Food Recovery Network, thinking about the future of reconfiguring things so that we are recovering food, not throwing it away, that this process does create jobs. When we think about the different logistics and processes that must be put into place to reconfigure our old ways of doing things, lots of jobs are created. And so that's a topic that I would love to talk with all of you about if you are interested. Okay, so you're here because you want to know why you should financially invest in Food Recovery Network. I know each and every single one of you here is going to do that today. Why should you do that? If I haven't convinced you yet, let me go a little bit further into our programming. So as was mentioned earlier, we have over 200 college chapters at all across the United States. Isabella represents our chapter at Georgetown, and we have so many other incredible students, just like Isabella, who are doing some really incredible work to recover surplus food in between classes, in between sports, and in between jobs. They're taking the time to recover their surplus food. And at Food Recovery Network, we've started off, this is our flagship program. This is the way that we know we can be on the front lines to bear witness and to show everyone, hey, this is literally what we could do with our surplus food. So at FRN National Office, we have an incredible team that I mentioned earlier, and we provide, through the National Office, we provide to all of our chapters technical support, mentorship, coaching. We provide direct financial support to them so that they have what they need to be able to recover food, 1 carload of food at a time, a van load of food at a time, a bag full of bagels at a time that they walk down to the local church or homeless shelter, domestic violence shelter. We want to make sure that they have what they need, because a lot of times people, the adults, the dining managers or the powers that be on their college campuses are not ready for this incredible new way of thinking, that we take all this extra food and we bring it to people experiencing hunger in our community. So we do provide a lot of coaching to support and keep the students at the forefront in the leadership role, just like Isabella, to have the conversations that she needs to help the chapter recruit new volunteers and keep things running. And we've been doing this for such a long time. And it's really interesting that, right now with our 200 plus chapters, we're on about 3.8% of higher education campuses, 3.8%. And just, think, if you feel so comfortable, close your eyes for a second and think about that. You've seen the pictures here. You've heard from Isabella, you saw the video, you saw the food moving. You close your eyes for a minute and you think, okay, Food Recovery Network's on 3.8% of higher education institutions. We have chapters there, 3.8%. What would it look like? What would it feel like if there were Food Recovery Network chapters in 10% of our higher education institutions? If we were at 25% of our higher education institutions were doing the right thing with their surplus food, what would it look like if we were at 45% of higher education? That means your alma maters, your neighbors' alma maters, your grandparents' alma maters, your friends. What would it look like if Food Recovery Network was on 60% of all of higher education institutions recovering surplus food? What would that look like? What would that feel like? What would food insecurity look like if we were able to do that? That's the future that I'm talking about, reconfiguring so that the majority of places are recovering their surplus food. Oh, we can do that. That is what we are working towards. And that's just one of our programs. That's our historic program. And that's the program we are so proud of because we believe so strongly in the power of young people to make change. When Larry was mentioned, when we first met, I was working at Coro, and Larry was, I'm a little bit older than Larry. Larry was in college doing this training program. And I was at that time running an internship program within Coro. So I was helping college students to find internships. So I have a long history of believing in the power of young people, directly believing in college students to grasp and attain the future that they want through internships. And now to support them in our belief that we can recover surplus food to feed everyone who's hungry. We can. We really can. So that's just, one program. I'd mentioned our strategic framework, FRN 10X. We have webinars about our framework. I've written a ton about our framework. So if any of you need information about FRN 10X and what that means, please let me know. Again, I want to make sure all of your questions are answered. But from this strategic framework where we showed the map, we have been able to design further programming to feed more people faster. I am so proud of, again, let me bring in, Katie into this, Katie Jones. Katie helped to design a program where we are working directly with our 2-year institutions, our community colleges. And this has been such an incredible experience for FRN. This is new programming. It's really exciting because through our mapping work, we understand that community colleges, not necessarily 4-year institutions, are the ones that are in closest proximity to people who are experiencing hunger. It's our 2-year institutions. They're closest into the neighborhoods and areas where people are experiencing food insecurity. They're closest into the proximities, the neighborhoods that have been extracted upon and now no longer have the consistent resources that they need, that they know that they need to help everyone who lives in those communities to thrive. So last year, we opened up a grant opportunity for our community colleges. And we had about 5 community colleges that are part of this cohort. They're still recovering food to this day. We actually just put out a press release, thanks to Sarah, our director of communications, on the results of one of our community college partners in Minnesota, where we provide direct financial support to our community colleges to enact any of the Food Recovery Network program models that we know will feed people. So either they start a chapter on their college campus, they do a large scale recovery, like I was mentioning, you know, at the Super Bowl. We can do those in all kinds of places. To have a free produce distribution market, I'll talk about that in just a second. To start a community refrigerator program. And now, today, we opened up our second year for this grant opportunity. And it actually just closed yesterday. And we had upwards of 20 community colleges apply to be part of this program. And when we think about the future of Food Recovery Network, when we think about how we can work more closely with community colleges, we can support more of this food recovery in ways that community colleges need to see it happen. We could do more of that, you know, if we were able to get more investment. So these are the things that we are able to do with your financial support, with your introductions to those who might have the ability to give financially to Food Recovery Network. We have waiting lists. We have waiting lists. Another of our programs that we were able to put forward design is our free food produce distribution markets. And I'm just so proud of this work. Here's Kimmy, our incredible development associate. I worked so closely with Kimmy. She helped us put together our conversation today. So thank you so much for all of that, Kimmy. I would say I'm technologically not super duper savvy, and Kimmy just makes it so easy for people like me to do what I want to be able to do, which is to communicate to all of you today. So this is Kimmy at one of our free produce distribution markets. Again, we work with Title I elementary schools. So these are the schools where more than half of the student population qualifies for free or reduced lunch. And now we know that a lot of these programs for free and reduced lunch for little kids, free breakfast, not only do we know that's on the chopping block, so again, you know, when we think about 47 million people who are food insecure right now, that number might go up if some certain safety programs are disinvested in. If that money goes away, we know more little people are going to be hungry. And so we work with Title I schools to support free produce distribution markets. And that looks very different. We've been doing this for about 4 years in Atlanta. We learned a ton. I don't even know how many times Kimmy has been to Atlanta, and others on our team. Aaron, who's also on this call right now on the team. Cassie, our director of development, has gone to Atlanta. Stephen, who's on the team. Julia, so many. Our newest hire, Hannah, it's already been going to some of these produce distribution markets. So we've learned so much from our partners in Atlanta. We've been able to feed so many people who don't deserve to be food insecure. And we've taken that learning and we have expanded that to Baltimore and to the St. Paul area. And those locations are directly in the locations that I was, again, talking about our mapping work, where we can feed more people faster if we do food recovery, if we do food distribution. Those locations have waiting lists. There are more Title I schools who now see what their neighboring schools are able to do, the incredible variety of food, this precious food that we buy directly from farmers or from secondary markets, and they can take what makes sense for them. We have a waiting list. And with your financial contribution, we can help that waiting list go down. And we can do another incredible thing into the future, which is expand the number of produce markets we're able to host to begin with. We have a short list of locations that we would love to start these free produce distribution markets. We know where the food is, we know where the cities are. We just need the financial backing to make this happen. So that is what your funding, your investment, your contributions will help us to do. We have current places that have a waiting list. We have a next list of places. We are really close to being able to start these produce markets. And you know what? After that, we have a whole entire map of places we know that we could start to feed people faster. So thank you for considering that financial contribution to Food Recovery Network. So I'm gonna, before I turn things over, I just really quickly wanted to talk about the fact that our large scale food distribution, so the Super Bowl, we've also over the past several years, we've worked really closely with the Gaylord Resort and Conference Center. We're so proud of this. So this is our large scale event recoveries where we're able to capture large volumes of food and bring that food directly into the community. Over the course of our couple of year relationship with the Gaylord, we've been able to recover and redistribute over 75,000 pounds of food. They have been an incredible partner to us. I've gone on some recoveries myself there. They know us by name. You have a little group chat going. And with your financial support, we would be able to do more of these kinds of partnerships. So the Gaylord, they are so kind to let us, have their surplus food, but we pay for the transportation to get over there. We're the ones we pay to rent the trucks, all of that. There is a financial cost to this, and we're only able to do this a couple times a month. But we could be there more often. We would love to be there more often. We would love to be at other Gaylord resorts. We would love to be at other hotels. And that is why we are looking for financial contribution, because again, you think about this resort, it's a resort, so the quality of their food is pretty spectacular. And I'm so excited about the conversation that we'll have with Eliza and Dr. Dan. But really quickly, the advocacy piece that Food Recovery Network works on. Advocacy means we want to feed people today because we know exactly where the food is. We know the locations where we could, put the food to best use. Our advocacy is how we educate others. I have spent a lot of time these last few weeks on the Hill in DC, educating our elected officials and their staff about food recovery, why it's important, in particular when many of these programs are on the chopping block that feed children, when many of these programs where schools are able to purchase food directly from farmers have been canceled. I want everyone on the Hill to know that Food Recovery Network is a resource. We've been able to put our name to incredible pieces of legislation that have passed, most notably the Food Donation Improvement Act that helps increase who can receive food. And we are now working on the Food Date Labeling Act to decrease confusion on date labels, to standardize that so that 80% of households are not unnecessarily throwing food away because they think it's no longer safe to eat, or that all the, again, millions of tons of food that could go to food banks that is turned away every year because of this confusion. We want to increase the federal minimum wage. When we think about federal work study of our incredible student leaders all across the United States, if they have work study, federal work study is $7.25 an hour. It's embarrassing. It's an embarrassingly low amount. We believe, today is May Day, we believe in fair wages for work. And so we want to increase the federal minimum wage to reflect what it actually takes to live here in the United States. Remember, only 22 counties in the whole entire United States, only 22 out of over 3,400 is the median salary a living wage. We think that's wrong. We want to make sure that people have the things that they need to thrive and to live. So thank you for considering supporting us. Together, we have the chance to correct a longstanding issue, caused by climate change and social disparities. We have the ability to do that together. I hope that you can see the work of Food Recovery Network promotes food access. It promotes living better lives. It promotes dignity and respect. And I'm going to say it also promotes fun, because going on a food recovery is a whole heck of a lot of fun. Even in the hardship of it all, we joke around, we have a great time. So thank you so much for your considerations. And again, if you have questions, please let us know. I'm going to turn things back over to Larry to ease us into the incredible conversation that I am so excited about.
Regina, thank you so much. And we're looking forward to continue with our conversation, and we appreciate your words. Certainly, they are moving as this organization continues to transform lives and really transform the state of our country at this point. With that, I have the distinct honor of bringing in Dr. Daniel Barnett, a preparedness, public health, and health security expert, along with Eliza Barclay, a renowned climate journalist, along with Regina as well. Good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
Awesome. So let's start with the first question here regarding public health. And Dr. Barnett, you can start us off here. What is public health, and how does food recovery fold into the concept of public health?
It's a great and important question. So public health has a variety of definitions, but the one that I prefer is population health. So the idea of identifying challenges and interventions to address problems at scale, as opposed to patient bedside care, for example, in clinical medicine, although clinicians are part of the public health system, whether they're aware of it or not, I like to say. But in the context of the work that the Food Recovery Network does, one of the themes of public health relates to addressing global challenges, but thinking of it and acting at a local level, sort of that old concept of think globally, act locally. So I can't think of a better example or embodiment, frankly, of that than the Food Recovery Network, and we can discuss more about that.
Eliza, your thoughts?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Really respect the work that Regina and co are doing. I think Dan's probably best suited to answer questions about public health. I think that, you know, I edit op-eds about climate for the Times, and one of the things I was asked to comment on is you know, the connection between food and climate, and I think it's a fascinating topic, and it's one that's tricky, I think, for a lot of ordinary citizens, because greenhouse gas emissions are invisible, and particularly the ones that are associated with food, I think can be just tricky for us to we can't see them, and we have to eat food. And so it's sort of one of the easier ones to dismiss. But in fact, as Regina mentioned, food production and also once we dispose of food, both are very significant sources of greenhouse gas emissions. And fortunately, I think awareness of that has been building over the last couple decades, and now we have so many more organizations and startups and entities in the private sector that are trying to do more about waste, but there's a very, very long way to go. And I think I find the work of this organization, you know, particularly poignant and important, like in this moment when climate is become a, you know, word non grata in politics, in the current administration, and so the work of NGOs can, you know, work a little bit outside of politics is incredibly important.
And I think also what's interesting as well in your capacity is that you're really telling the story of sort of what are the impacts and implications of policy neglect and sort of the changes in the climate, right? I think the sort of the interesting opportunity that we have as journalists is being able to see that really, well, we understand what it is in theory and in practice when we kind of talk about policy, but we get to look at, well, what are the implications of those decisions on real lives, on real communities? And I think certainly that tells a powerful story too about the people that are affected, the things that they experience, the sort of ways in which they may or even may not be disenfranchised as well. So, Eliza, thank you for that perspective. Regina, your thoughts on sort of the connection between public health and food. You know, I think oftentimes we kind of think of food sort of just broadly, right? Very much in theory, but we know that it has a sort of transformative impact in uplifting communities, uplifting families, and that having access to it, making sure that good food doesn't go to waste, ensures that our families are healthy, whole, and are able to sort of move up in society and be the sort of productive members that we all hope that they would be.
Yeah, thanks so much, Larry. It's true. And Dr. Dan, I would love to hear too, like maybe your thoughts on this. But as you mentioned, when we're lucky, we all get to eat, and I do know firsthand the stress that is on those who don't have enough food to eat. Many of you who know me, I grew up in a working poor household. We had food, but we didn't have a whole heck of a lot of other things. And there was always this like stress in the family. There's always this stress in the family. And my parents, worked shift work. They worked hard, long hours. They're on their feet, and the way, and again, today's May Day, their jobs were never gonna be enough. They never were gonna pay enough. So it was always this like quilt work of making everything kind of work out. But the stress was like a family member, it had its own sort of feel to it. And when I grew up and left the house, I was a working poor adult. And so I inherited, a lot of that stress. And I think, if we think about it in terms of national health, national security, we are allowing tens of millions of people to languish when we have so much abundance around us. I've said this word before, it's embarrassing, but it's also creating such chronic issues for all of us. And so I just wonder, Dr. Dan, if there's any thoughts you have on that.
Well, it's a great point, Regina. And, we think a lot about the physical health impacts of food insecurity, but what is often less addressed, even in public health contexts, is the psychosocial dimensions of it. So we know that mental health impacts of food insecurity range from everything from adult and pediatric depression and anxiety, reduced school outcomes in children, and behavioral issues. And it's a vicious feedback loop. And so, this also, frankly, relates to health security because as much as the physical health impacts are relevant and critical, it's also the psychological and the mental health impacts that have chronic and even generational potential effects. So it's a very important point.
Dr. Barnett, thank you so much for that. I mean, we've been talking about sort of these connections, either direct or indirect. I think it's important for us to also talk about sort of the positives, right? I mean, we know that the exceptional work that Food Recovery Network is doing and organizations like it, but these organizations have a real impact in improving overall health. And then Eliza, to your perspective and your capacity as a journalist, I'd imagine that seeing organizations like Food Recovery Network sort of be boots on the ground and addressing this issue is having a real impact just in improving lives. And so, Dr. Barnett, I'll start with you. What have you seen in terms of a improvement in overall public health as a result of organizations like Food Recovery Network and the work that they do in trying to recover food that is good quality food that can go in and feed families that need it?
Well, there are several, and sort of leading the list is meeting the bottom part of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid, frankly. which, food, water, shelter, right? We list food, interestingly, sort of almost like by convention as first, right? You can, and that's not an accident. It's a fundamental. And so I think, at root level, Food Recovery Network addresses that most basic level of need that allows for literal survival. And as Regina very aptly mentioned earlier, we are at people living paycheck to paycheck. I just saw statistics, 74% of Americans are currently living paycheck to paycheck. And I need not expand on the food aspects of that, but it is a crisis. And and it's not just a US crisis, it's a global crisis. And right now, I have colleagues at the Center for Livable Future who I collaborate and work with and communicate a lot with. And per their assessment, which I agree, right now it's a food distribution problem. We have plenty of food.
Mm-hmm.
But what the Food Recovery Network is doing is addressing the waste of that plenty of food, which sounds very, a simplistic summary, but I can't overemphasize the importance of that. Not only that, my background is in general preventive medicine, so I'm very prevention oriented. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. And sort of the return on investment of taking steps to reduce food waste has so many cascading beneficial effects. Everything from not only, as Eliza mentioned, from climate issues, but also in terms of physical, mental health, societal functioning, and frankly, health security. So it has the sort of you can think of it as like a cascading positive set of beneficial impacts. And as I mentioned earlier, I really believe in that thinking globally but acting locally. And the fact that this is a student, we have networks of students from across the country who are doing incredible work, and frankly, that's the future. And not to sound trite, but it's the future. And so the engagement of students as in sort of an advocacy and active role in addressing this, I think it could not be more timely.
Dr. Barnett, thank you. Eliza, to you, I wonder if at all, how encouraged are you by not just Food Recovery Network, but by other similar organizations as well about the sort of work that's being done to address the issue? Have you noticed the impact? Have you noticed, based on your reporting, that things are changing, at least slowly, despite some of the problems that we, in fact, encounter?
Yeah, thanks. Well, to be perfectly honest, our overall greenhouse gas emissions, like as a country, are not going down in the way that they should be. And these emissions from landfills that are being mitigated or stopped by this particular effort, are like relatively small, right, in the grand scheme. But I think that one important aspect of this work is that, there's often in the sort of public discourse about climate, we talk a lot about, individual decisions and choices. And this is where we live in a country that's obviously very focused on the individual. And so it's like, did you buy an electric car? Did you take a reusable grocery bag to the store? And I think you can argue that it's important for people to make those kind of individual decisions. However, like, we will not deal with this problem without, systemic solutions. And so, you have to, and some systemic or system-wide solutions like really are very top-down, but other ones are more grassroots. And I think that that's what this kind of work is. It's a grassroots, but it's a system level change, right? And it probably has all kinds of, cascading effects like that maybe are difficult to measure, but you know, somebody who works with in Regina's program, like goes on to do food waste policy one day or climate policy, like, and that's contributing, you know, to the much, it's building capacity and um, building more ways and paths to like to dealing with this super complex problem. Obviously, hunger also very hard problem. Climate, very hard problem. Um, but I do, but I find what I find most hopeful and encouraging about it is that it is, it's at the level, at the systems level, instead of just like telling people to buy an electric car, which, you know, only gets us so far.
Yeah, I, I wonder how concerned are you about the sort of state of the environment based on your reporting? I mean, the sort of reporting, at least that's out there right now, suggests that we are really at this point that's sort of dire. And I wonder for you, is that something that you two would agree with, that we're really at the turning point or the precipice of the turning point?
Well, climate, so I do think we're not making the progress on this problem that we need to be. And at the global level, you know, greenhouse gas emissions are going up. In this country, we're sort of trading some old ones for some new ones. We're making a little bit of progress on some of them, but we're not really bending the curve, is the expression. On greenhouse gas emissions. It's not, but it's not quite a precipice type of situation. It's more of just a gradual worsening. There's no like cliff that we're going to fall off of. But I think that in our lifetimes, I think everybody on this call and probably would agree that they have seen the impacts of climate change getting worse, like in the last few years in their lifetime for sure. And so we are now living in an era of an unstable climate. We lived in a stable climate. Now we live in an unstable climate. And so, yeah, absolutely. The impacts are going to get worse for sure. Even if we make more progress on the problem, it's such a big problem. It's really hard to like stop it or fix it or turn it around. But I do think we still have time. Like, absolutely, the human race is not doomed. All biodiversity on Earth is not doomed. Like, there is absolutely still a lot of time and opportunity to bring our emissions down, find other solutions. So I am, you know, generally relatively hopeful that humanity is going to use its intelligence to find, you know, faster ways to deal with the problem. But the truth is that right now we're moving like way too slowly.
Always hope for things sooner rather than later. Eliza, thank you for that. I want to let you know, if you have a question right now in the chat, would be a great opportunity for you to pass along your question so that we can have our panel of experts contribute some insight and potentially answer those questions as best as they possibly can. Regina, do you consider FRN a sort of player in the environmental justice fight? I mean, granted, food is being recovered, it's given to those families and those individuals that could certainly benefit from making sure that good food doesn't go to waste. But I'd imagine too that there's a part of you that feels that you are a sort of key player in trying to improve the state of the environment as we know it.
I believe we are. You know, for us, it is, again, that reconfiguration of what we do with our abundance, of which there is so much. It is the logistics issue, and we're experts at that. You know, I have to say, you know, if you want to talk to somebody about logistics, you know, Erin has been on our team for going on 7 years and has conducted so many different kinds of food recovery, 100,000 pounds to, you know, again, a U-Haul's worth of food. It is just about the logistics, and it is about the will. You know, it is about, do we want to do this with our food? And we can talk about liability, we can talk about the fears that people have. But when I had mentioned the FRN 10X, our strategic framework, for us at the center of that is the question that we asked ourselves. So this is based on the Annie E. Casey results count framework, which is no matter what sector you're in, no matter what problem you are trying to solve, how are you going to close and mitigate ethnic and racial disparities? How are you going to do that? And so for Food Recovery Network, we were coming up with our mapping work to understand where all the people who are unnecessarily suffering from food insecurity, these are Black and Brown communities. And when we look at some of these Black and Brown communities, they are the ones that are experiencing environmental harm at rates, again, far different and with far fewer resources than their white counterparts in the white communities. And so when we think again about New Orleans and some of the environmental harms that they have there, I know that there was just a really wonderful win for the people in the South and in Cancer Alley. You know, we call it like we see it. You know, Cancer Alley, the petrol stations are so close to these different communities because the companies knew that they had enough money and power to drown out the voices of the community members who said, like, hey, we're sick, or hey, we don't want this, hey, we don't want another petrol station near us. And so we do believe that, you know, Food Recovery Network, we are the people. We are thousands of people all across the United States in so many really cool and diverse places that all are committed to, we got to recover the surplus food, who are committed to, you know, when we don't throw away food, we are helping our environment. So I definitely see us at the center of that, Larry.
Regina, thank you so much for that. We do have one question from the chat. We'll get to this one question and then we will send it back over to Regina because we want to be respectful of folks' time. Stephen Corfana wrote this. He says, hi, I'm new to FRN and appreciate the invite. What is your largest challenge? Is it financial donations, vendor network to donate food, or logistical support after vendors donate food? Regina?
Oh, Stephen, what a wonderful question. Thank you so much. And I hope that even after today, we can continue the conversation, but to answer it for us, it is the financial supports. We are about to finish up our most ambitious budget for this year. We grew to a $1.5 million budget. I do see a vision for a Food Recovery Network where we can feed more people when we increase our budget. And the reason why we really specifically focus on financial contribution from all of you who are listening in is because that is how we are able to make decisions based on what we're seeing in the communities. Do we need to buy more food? Can we start a new free produce market in one of the areas that we know that is you know, part of our focus area? The finances allow us to do that. It allows me to pay the staff their wages and invest fully into you know, other benefits that they deserve. And so that's why that financial is so critical to the work that we're doing. A lot of times people say like, oh, well, I can help do a food recovery. And we say things like, oh, are you available at 1:30 on Tuesday, as in tomorrow, because that's when we're going to do a recovery. And people often will say like, oh, I can't because that's too short a notice, or I'm at work. Which is why, you know, our latent capacity student volunteers work so well. But again, it goes to, you know, why that financial contribution really does give us the flexibility that we need.
Regina, thank you so much for that. Again, if you are in a position to do so, you will see in the chat, we provided you a link where you can support FRN through a tax deductible donation, which goes a long way, especially in these trying times that we live in. We want to thank our panel again, Eliza and Dr. Barnett. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, Regina, we will send it over to you as we say goodbye.
Amazing. Oh, huge thank you. Huge amounts of gratitude to all of you for spending some time with us. I you know, on and off court, I'm friends with Dr. Dan, I'm friends with Eliza. Thank you both so much for just giving us a, you know, a glimpse into some of the things that you are thinking about every single day. It really meant a lot to me to include your voice in this really, I hope, robust conversation, to see your perspectives on how Food Recovery Network and what you're thinking about, again, in your daily work, where it's all connected. I just really appreciate you both so much. It means a lot to me, so thank you. And to Larry, oh my gosh, we'll have breakfast soon. Thank you for being our incredible MC today. And to the staff, sitting in on this conversation, who helped put this together. Thank you so much. To our board members, well, Dr. Jessica, thank you for helping to kick off this conversation, but a couple of our board members, Bill, who I just mentioned, who sat on the board of directors for 7 years with Food Recovery Network. Thank you for your time today. Christian Stanley, our newest board member. Thank you so much for joining in today. And for all of you, thank you so much. If there are questions that you have that we did not answer, I have an answer for you. You can join our newsletter. You can listen to any number of the recorded conversations that we've had about our work, because I really, it is about trust. It is about how we want to change lives. And I know that Food Recovery Network can do that. So if there are any lingering questions that you have, if you think to yourself like, oh, I'm about to go to this conference, I wonder if they do food recovery, I'm going to tell you chances are probably pretty high that they do not. So, the person who's putting that conference together, put us in touch. We do have some room in our budget. Again, this is why the finances are so important. We have some room in our budget later on in the year, and a few months from now, to show up and to do some of these large scale food recovery. So if that is of interest to you, please be in touch. Sometimes people need to see the work in action to truly understand. But thank you everyone for your time today. It has meant a lot to me, and we hope to see you at another Food Recovery Network event in the near future. And in the meantime, good health to everyone. Please spread the word about Food Recovery Network. Check to see if your alma mater has a chapter. And please do consider, taking an action in a way that makes the most sense to you. So thank you again, everyone.